Foo Fighters are a band who have recorded a ton of big hit singles over the years, but they're also a band that have a lot of songs that could have been as big as their biggest hits, but didn't get their chance to shine. Here are my top 10 Foo Fighters tracks that should have been hits. Coming in at number 10, we have Disenchanted Lullaby. One by One is a Foo Fighters record that has a lot of singles on it. 4 of them, in fact, and each of them are awesome all-timer Foo Fighters tracks. All My Life, Times Like These, Low, and Have It All. Classics. But despite those gargantuan hits, I always thought that there were some other great tracks on the One by One album that could have made a bigger impact, namely Disenchanted Lullaby. To me, this has all the elements of a big Foo Fighters hit. It has a quiet, lightly picked guitar intro before breaking in to a huge Foo Fighters chorus where Dave is just letting it rip vocally. Don't get me wrong, Low and Have It All are great final singles for One by One, but this one could have really sent the One by One era into overdrive. Hey, that's another good Foo Fighters track. Coming in at number 9, we have Sean. One of the things that I think has lacked a lot in the more recent Foo Fighters era is the lack of just fun, upbeat, poppy Foo Fighters tracks. They still rock pretty hard, but I always felt like their music took more of a heavier, hard rock turn on songs like Bridge Burning as opposed to the fun, poppier rock sound of songs like Breakout. But Sean from 2015's Saint Cecilia EP brings back more of that kind of lighthearted, carefree vibe with a poppy vocal from Dave Grohl and some quality riffage in there too. Overall, it's a fun, old school sounding Foo Fighters song that would have sounded great on the radio if it got more play. Saint Cecilia, the title track, was the bigger single from that EP, and it's a great track without a doubt, but it's more of that serious side of the Foo Fighters, which we get way more often these days than the Learn to Fly era pop rock style. Before we continue, guys, if you like this video, make sure to toss me a thumbs up and a like. I'd really appreciate that. And make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. All right, let's get back to it. Coming in at number 8 on my list of Foo Fighters songs that should have been hits, we have Walking a Line. Similar to other great B-side bands of their era like Oasis or Smashing Pumpkins, Foo Fighters have a lot of really great songs that were dumped onto B-sides of singles or bonus tracks on their albums. One of those killer bonus tracks was Walking a Line, which was a bonus track on the special bonus disc version of One by One, which came out in 2002. I think the song was only available on the DVD bonus disc at the time, but you know what? It's a friggin' gem. And when I think about great Foo Fighters songs that could have been big hits or gotten more love on the radio or MTV, I always gravitate more towards the rocky tracks in their discography. This one just has a fun, loose vibe to it with a great riff off the top, a great vocal from Dave Grohl. I'm not saying it's like All My Life level of awesomeness, but it's a great track. I could have totally heard it getting some major heavy rotation on rock radio, but it didn't even make the track list of the album. And like Oasis, Foo Fighters had the luxury at the time of putting lesser known songs onto smaller single releases or a bonus DVD disc of all places. I don't think they would do that now. And great songs are always needed. I have a hard time thinking bands like Foo Fighters would bury these songs on obscure releases in the modern streaming era. Think of the tens of dollars those Walking a Line spins could have generated back then. Thankfully, the song is available on streaming now, so at least it's getting a little bit more love than it did back in the day. Coming in at number 7, we have Fraternity. There's Nothing Left to Lose is my favorite Foo Fighters album by a mile, and my favorite era of the band as well. That whole period in the band's career just had a really fun sound and aesthetic that I loved when the album came out when I was in high school. And it was around that time that I started learning more about the Foo's non-album tracks and B-sides, something that I had already done with Oasis a few years before, and I was so happy to find so many great Foo Fighters songs that weren't on the CDs that I was buying at the store. I guess I have Napster to thank for that. Thanks, guys. Fraternity is only one of the many great B-sides from the There's Nothing Left to Lose era, but it's definitely my favorite of the bunch. I'll never be fraternity. Found on the Generator single and the Australian/Japanese version of There's Nothing Left to Lose, Fraternity has more of a streamlined, less screamy vocal from Dave Grohl and solid drums that are played by either Dave or Taylor. We've never really gotten official confirmation on that one. To me, this could have been a huge hit along with Learn to Fly and the other singles from the album. There was a lot of great singles from that record. It's definitely an unsung gem from the There's Nothing Left to Lose era. Coming in at number 6 on my top top Foo Fighters tracks that should have been hits, we have No Way Back. Now, No Way Back was released as a single along with Cold Day in the Sun from In Your Honor back in 2006, and it did get some love actually, reaching number 37 on the charts in Canada, number 64 on the UK singles chart, and number 6 on the US mainstream rock chart. But it definitely was not a huge single akin to the likes of Best of You from that album. Hell, even DOA and Resolve were not even that big, and they got the single treatment. And anybody who knows me as a Foo Fighters fan knows that I'm not a huge fan of Best of You. It's actually my least favorite Foo Fighters song of all time. It's just something about that song doesn't appeal to me, and I love every Foo Fighters song. And I was worried at the time when they released that single that I wouldn't enjoy In Your Honor if it sounded a lot like that track. Thankfully, the album was awesome when I picked it up in the summer of 2005, but No Way Back is a much rockier and more energetic song than Best of You. And I get it, it's a little bit more of a by the numbers Foo Fighters track, but if it got more of the push or reception that Best of You did, or maybe if it was released as the first single instead of the fourth single, it would have kicked off the In Your Honor era in a much more kick-ass way. But the Foo Fighters have always had a little bit of a strange view of hit singles, especially when it comes to the first single from their records. You look at Shame Shame from Medicine at Midnight, not really that great of a first single. Coming in at number 5, we have Live in Skin. And I can't change back for you. As I said, there's nothing left to lose. It's by far my favorite Foo Fighters album. There are a ton of songs on this album that deserve to be singles, even though half the album was already released as singles. One of those tracks is Live in Skin, with its gigantic riff and huge soaring melody from Dave Grohl. It's one of the most kick-ass tracks on the album for sure. But Live in Skin will forever live its life just like that, as a solid kick-ass album track. There were no shortage of great songs to pick from on this album, but Live in Skin would have made a great summer single. Coming in at number 4, we have Hey Johnny Park. So The Color and the Shape is not an album that is starving for hits by any stretch of the imagination. We had Monkey Wrench, Everlong, My Hero. The album practically invented the big 90s rock single. But that said, there are a ton of awesome tracks on the record that would have made great Foo Fighters hits. My Poor Brain, Wind Up, and especially Hey Johnny Park. It appears on the album right after Monkey Wrench, so it's got this great 1-2 punch of great Foo Fighters rockers. Not to mention the riff kicks absolute ass, and it's got one of Dave Grohl's best vocals on record. I'm sure it got some radio play in some form back in the day, but Hey Johnny Park would have made a huge hit had it been given a little bit more love back in 97 or 98, but that's okay because it's still one of the best Foo Fighters songs, period. Coming in at number 3, we have Generator. I know what you're saying. Generator was released as a single, and you're absolutely right, from There's Nothing Left to Lose in Australia and Europe, and actually received its fair share of airplay back in the day. But in terms of chart performance, it didn't really light up the charts. It reached number 31 on the Australian charts and number 12 on the UK rock and metal charts. But it's always been my favorite track on that album and one of my favorite Foo songs ever. The talk box riff intro from Dave is such a great way to kick off the song. It always gets me hyped up, and the riff is killer, and it's got more of that great melodic voice that Dave Grohl had back in the day. It was a single and hit in Australia and Europe, but it never got that same love and treatment in North America. Most people know and love Learn to Fly as the big single from There's Nothing Left to Lose, but Generator is the superior song in my opinion and deserved to be coming out of a million radio speakers to blow people's collective minds. In at number 2, we have Cheer Up Boys, Your Makeup is Running. Now this track from Echo's Silence, Patience and Grace was officially released as a single from the record, but I don't think anybody would really call it a huge hit. It was released as single number 3 out of 4 from that record, released after The Pretender and Long Road to Ruin. But it didn't exactly blow up the charts, peaking at number 95 on the Japan Hot 100 chart and number 194 on the UK singles chart, and it definitely didn't get a lot of airplay on radio stations in North America. But it's a song that is worthy of so much more love. Echo's Silence, Patience and Grace has some pretty heavy songs on it, like Let It Die, Erase Replace, Come Alive, and Cheer Up Boys is just fun, vintage pop rock Foo Fighters. And don't get me wrong, The Pretender was definitely the right choice, the best choice for the first single from the record, but Cheer Up Boys would have made a much better second single than Long Road to Ruin and might have become a bigger hit with the mainstream audience because Long Road to Ruin wasn't really a big hit either. And coming in at number 1 on my top Foo Fighters songs that should have been hits, we have The Sign. To me, this is the best Foo Fighters song ever released that wasn't a single. The Sign is a song that was a bonus track on the iTunes version of In Your Honor and some international vinyl versions of the album. Which is a shame because this song deserved to be a huge radio hit and so much more than a bonus track that nobody can find anymore. It's a huge Foo Fighters rocker with a huge sound and a huge fist in the air Foo Fighters chorus. Just give it a sign and I'll come for you. As I said earlier in this video, I never really liked Best of You as a single. I find it overrated. Can you imagine if The Sign was released instead as the first single from In Your Honor? It would have been a giant radio hit and huge with fans as opposed to the melodramatic Best of You, pretty much the only Foo Fighters song I don't really like. But like so many other bands of their era, Oasis, Smashing Pumpkins, Weezer, Foo Fighters sometimes didn't realize the quality of their unreleased tracks and what they had with these extra tracks and B-sides. I consider it to be a lost opportunity, and The Sign, out of all these Foo Fighters songs, should have been a huge hit for the Foo Fighters. And that is it, guys. That is my top 10 Foo Fighters tracks that should have been hits. Now it's your turn. Hop into the comments below. Let me know which Foo Fighters tracks you think should have been bigger hits. And make sure to like this video. Toss me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos and can rock out here on the channel. And make sure to follow me on social media across platforms at Nick Chino Music. But I'll see you guys again for another video here on the channel. Until then, rock on, everybody.